Most men are still operating under a dangerous illusion that relationships are governed by honesty, intention, and emotional investment. They believe that if they show enough sincerity, consistency, and vulnerability, connection will stabilize on its own. This belief is not naive, it is lethal. Because while they are trying to be understood, the actual game is being played somewhere else. Power is being negotiated silently. Value is being measured constantly. And attraction is responding to forces they were never taught to see. This is where most men lose control without realizing it, not because they are weak, but because they are blind. And blindness is always punished. Be honest with yourself. How many times have you lost influence, attraction, or leverage in a relationship, not because you did something wrong, but because you misunderstood how power was actually operating? The brutal truth is this: romantic relationships do not collapse because of lack of love. They collapse because of misaligned power dynamics. Love does not regulate behavior. Incentives do, consequences do, scarcity does. Once you understand this, you stop reacting emotionally to outcomes that were structurally inevitable. And that shift alone separates the man who is repeatedly confused from the man who is rarely surprised. Niccolo Machiavelli understood this centuries ago, not in the context of romance, but in the study of human behavior under pressure. What he documented was not cruelty, it was realism. He observed that people respond less to declared intentions and more to enforced structures. Less to affection, more to leverage. Less to promises, more to consequences. And nowhere is this more visible than in intimate relationships, where stakes are high and illusions are strongest. Most people assume power in relationships is about dominance. It isn't. It's about dependence. Whoever needs the relationship more is already negotiating from weakness. Whoever can walk away without collapse is operating from strength. This is not a moral statement. It is a mechanical one. Power emerges automatically from asymmetry of need. Here is the first uncomfortable revelation. Attraction is not maintained by emotional availability. It is maintained by emotional discipline. The man who over-explains, over-accommodates, and over-invests does not create safety. He erodes tension, and tension is not toxicity. Tension is polarity. Without it, desire decays. Most men confuse consistency with value. They believe that being always present, always responsive, always understanding signals strength. In reality, it signals replaceability. When access is unlimited, appreciation collapses. When presence is guaranteed, curiosity dies. When availability is constant, leverage disappears. This is not because people are malicious. It is because the human nervous system adapts. What is predictable stops being stimulating. What is guaranteed stops being valued. What carries no risk stops commanding respect. Look at the pattern that repeats endlessly. Early stages: independence, uncertainty, selective disclosure, separate lives. Attraction grows, energy is high, attention is earned. Then progression happens. The man collapses his world into the relationship. He removes friction. He eliminates uncertainty. He becomes fully available. He mistakes surrender for intimacy. And slowly, something shifts. Interest cools. Respect softens. The dynamic tilts. Nothing dramatic happens. No argument, no betrayal. Just a quiet reordering of power. And from that moment forward, the man feels it. He tries harder, explains more, gives more, which accelerates the loss. Because effort without leverage does not restore balance, it confirms imbalance. This is where Machiavelli's insight becomes lethal if misunderstood and liberating if applied correctly. Power is not asserted through force. It is established through structure. The structure of consequences. The structure of access. The structure of self-sufficiency. The second revelation follows directly. Emotional transparency, without strategic restraint, destroys leverage. Most men believe that revealing everything builds closeness. What it actually does is eliminate mystery. And mystery is not manipulation, it is space. Space for projection, space for desire, space for interest to breathe. When everything is revealed, nothing remains to be pursued. When every thought is shared, no tension survives. When every emotion is processed out loud, emotional weight transfers to the listener. And once you become emotionally heavy, you stop being attractive. You become a container for stress, not a source of elevation. This is where many men get it wrong. They think suppression is the solution. It isn't. The solution is regulation, controlled expression, selective disclosure, emotional economy, saying less but with weight, feeling deeply but acting deliberately. Power in relationships does not come from emotional absence. It comes from emotional self-control. Now consider boundaries. Most men believe boundaries are verbal. They are not. Boundaries are behavioral. A boundary that is stated but not enforced is not a boundary. It is a request. And requests are negotiable. Power is not. Watch how people test boundaries instinctively. Small delays, small disrespect, small withdrawals. Each test is a probe. To a question, how much can I take without consequence? If the answer is as much as I want, the behavior escalates, not out of cruelty, but efficiency. Humans always take the path of least resistance. The man who tolerates inconsistency teaches others to be inconsistent with him. The man who tolerates disrespect trains others to disrespect him. The man who tolerates imbalance institutionalizes imbalance. Machiavelli observed that people respect what enforces limits, not what pleads for understanding. This is why affection without structure collapses, because affection fluctuates, desire fluctuates, circumstances fluctuate, but consequences do not when they are real. Here is the third revelation, and this one cuts deep. Relationships do not end when attraction dies. Attraction dies when leverage disappears. The ending is just the visible outcome of an invisible shift that happened much earlier. Men often feel blindsided because they are tracking the wrong indicators. They track words, reassurance, declarations, promises. But words are cheap. Behavior is expensive. Attention, effort, investment, those are the currencies that reveal power alignment. When a person senses you will remain regardless of how they behave, the incentive to behave well disappears. Not because they are bad, but because the system no longer rewards effort. This is why unconditional availability is strategically destructive, not emotionally noble, strategically suicidal. Machiavelli famously wrote that it is better to be feared than loved if one cannot be both. This line has been misunderstood for centuries. He was not advocating intimidation. He was describing reliability. Love depends on feeling. Fear, more accurately, respect, depends on consequence. One fluctuates. The other stabilizes behavior. In relational terms, this means it is better to be respected than adored. Adoration without respect leads to exploitation. Respect without adoration still preserves structure. The ideal is both, but if forced to choose, respect prevents decay. This is why men who are nice but not firm are often treated worse than men who are calm but uncompromising. Niceness signals tolerance, calm firmness signals limits, and limits are what anchor dynamics. Now the most counterintuitive truth: the problem is rarely the other person. The problem is the invisible behavior you were rewarded for early and punished for later. You were rewarded for independence. You were punished for collapse. You were rewarded for selectivity. You were punished for overexposure. You were rewarded for strength. You were punished for need. Once you see this, resentment dissolves, because nothing was personal. It was structural. This is where most men resist. They want morality. They want fairness. They want intention to matter. But systems do not respond to intention. They respond to incentives. And relationships are systems. The man who understands this stops chasing validation. He stops explaining. He stops negotiating attraction. He restores leverage by restoring self-sufficiency. He does not threaten. He does not manipulate. He simply becomes less dependent. And dependency is the root of power imbalance. This is the quiet shift that changes everything. When your life is full, your presence becomes valuable. When your absence has weight, your attention gains meaning. When you do not need to be chosen, you are chosen more often. Machiavelli would recognize this immediately. Power belongs to the one who can walk away without collapse, not because they want to, but because they can. And this is the point where most men either grow or retreat, because the implication is uncomfortable. It means regaining power requires letting go of fantasy, letting go of guarantees, letting go of the need to be liked at the expense of being respected. This is not cruelty, this is clarity. If this feels threatening, it's because it removes excuses. It removes the illusion that effort alone guarantees outcome. It replaces hope with structure, and once structure is restored, outcomes change. Once leverage is restored internally, behavior changes externally without effort. This is the part most men don't believe until they experience it. They assume influence must be asserted, negotiated, or explained. In reality, influence is felt. It emerges from position, not persuasion. When you no longer chase clarity, clarity arrives. When you no longer seek reassurance, reassurance is offered. When you stop managing perception, perception recalibrates on its own. Not because the other person suddenly became enlightened, but because the incentive structure shifted. This is the law most people refuse to accept. Behavior adjusts to consequences faster than to conversation. The man who keeps explaining his value is signaling doubt. The man who keeps justifying his boundaries is signaling weakness. The man who keeps negotiating respect is signaling dependence. None of these restore power, they expose the lack of it. The moment you stop arguing for your position and start occupying it, dynamics realign. Here is where many men make a fatal mistake. They confuse withdrawal with coldness. They think restoring distance means becoming distant. It does not. Strategic distance is not emotional absence. It is emotional containment. You remain present without being consumed, available without being predictable, engaged without being absorbed. This is what creates polarity. Polarity requires separation. Without separation, there is no tension. Without tension, there is no desire. Without desire, there is only habit. And habit never sustains respect. Most relationships do not fail because of conflict. They fail because of emotional saturation, too much access, too much exposure, too much merging. People don't miss what never leaves. They don't value what never withholds. They don't pursue what is already secured. This is not cruelty, it is neurobiology. The human brain allocates attention based on contrast. Scarcity sharpens perception. Predictability dulls it. When your presence becomes a constant, it fades into background noise. When your presence is earned, it becomes signal. Power, in this sense, is simply the ability to create contrast. Now we reach the most uncomfortable part of Machiavellian realism. Self-respect must be prioritized over harmony, not because harmony is bad, but because harmony without structure is fragile. It collapses under stress. The first time pressure enters the system, the person with less leverage absorbs the cost. That person is usually the one who just wants things to work. Wanting things to work is not a strategy, it is a hope. And hope has never stabilized a power dynamic. Stability comes from alignment, from knowing what you tolerate and what you don't, from enforcing consequences without anger, without explanation, without drama. Calm enforcement is the highest form of authority. Emotional enforcement signals loss of control. The man who gets angry is invested in outcome. The man who sets limits is invested in position. This distinction changes everything. At this stage, most men ask the wrong question. They ask, how do I get the outcome I want? The correct question is, what position must I occupy so outcomes stop being unpredictable? Once you occupy the correct position, outcomes follow naturally. That position is self-sufficiency, not independence as a slogan, but independence as a lived reality, a full life, multiple sources of meaning, internal regulation, external options. When your identity is not anchored to one relationship, your behavior changes automatically. You stop tolerating misalignment, you stop chasing clarity, you stop overinvesting, and paradoxically, that restraint increases your value. This is why people who are needed less are respected more. They are not desperate, they are not fragile, they are not easily manipulated by withdrawal or approval. They cannot be controlled through scarcity because they already have it internally. Machiavelli would recognize this as true power, not force, not manipulation, but autonomy. Autonomy removes fear, and fearlessness changes how you move. The man who fears loss behaves submissively. The man who does not fear loss behaves deliberately. Others feel this difference instantly, even if they cannot articulate it. This is where illusions collapse. Many men believe attraction is about being chosen. In reality, attraction is about being choosable without seeking to be chosen. The moment you seek selection, you surrender position. This does not mean indifference. It means optionality. Optionality is the foundation of leverage. When someone senses that you are choosing them, not clinging to them, the dynamic reverses. They invest more, they test less, they respect boundaries sooner, because the cost of losing access becomes real. Without cost, behavior does not improve. Now consider this. Most emotional pain in relationships does not come from rejection. It comes from confusion, mixed signals, inconsistency, ambiguity. That confusion is not accidental. It is the result of unclear structure. When boundaries are vague, people behave opportunistically. When boundaries are clear, people self-select. Clarity is merciless, but it is efficient. The man who tolerates ambiguity in the name of hope trades certainty for anxiety. The man who enforces clarity trades anxiety for peace. Even if that clarity leads to loss, it is a clean loss. And clean losses preserve dignity and position. Machiavelli understood that prolonged uncertainty destroys morale faster than defeat. In personal dynamics, the same rule applies. Uncertainty drains energy. Structure restores it. This is why walking away is sometimes the most powerful move, not as a threat, not as manipulation, but as alignment. When a relationship no longer respects your position, remaining in it devalues you further. Exit restores balance immediately. People sense when you are willing to leave, and they sense when you are not. This alone determines how far they will push. Now let's address the internal resistance, the voice that says this is too harsh, that it eliminates romance, that it turns relationships into transactions. That voice is protecting fantasy. Fantasy feels good, but it makes you vulnerable. Reality feels cold, but it makes you effective. And effectiveness is what creates stability. The truth is, relationships already operate on exchange. Pretending otherwise does not make them purer. It just makes you unaware. Awareness does not kill connection. It filters it. The connections that survive realism are real. The ones that collapse were dependent on illusion. This is not pessimism. It is selection. You are not meant to be deeply connected to everyone. You are meant to be aligned with a few. Alignment requires standards. Standards require enforcement. Enforcement requires the willingness to lose what does not meet them. This is the price of power. And most men refuse to pay it because they fear loneliness more than disrespect. But disrespect is a slower, quieter form of loneliness. It isolates you while keeping you surrounded. The man who understands power chooses solitude over erosion. And from that position, connection becomes cleaner, stronger, and rarer. This is why those who master relational power often appear calm. They are not fighting for position. They already occupy it. They are not negotiating attraction. They are selecting compatibility. That is the final shift. You stop trying to be chosen. You start choosing. At that moment, everything changes. Machiavelli did not teach cruelty. He taught consequence. He did not promote manipulation. He exposed mechanics. Those mechanics operate whether you acknowledge them or not. Ignore them, and you will keep losing leverage without understanding why. Understand them, and you will stop being confused by outcomes that once felt personal. Power does not make you cold. It makes you clear. And clarity is the most stabilizing force in any relationship. This is the truth most people never articulate, but everyone responds to. The dynamics you tolerate define the outcomes you experience. The structure you enforce determines the respect you receive. The independence you maintain governs the attraction you sustain. Nothing here is moral. Nothing here is sentimental. It is structural. And structures do not care what you believe. They only respond to what you do. Once you see this, you cannot unsee it. and once you stop unseeing it, you stop losing power where it matters most.